Hi, this is Carlos Cousins, and this is a paired short passage question. For this sort of question, what you need to watch out for, since we're being asked how to describe a statement made in one of the passages, is of course where this statement is located, but then what it is in response to. And this statement, we're told, is in reaction to the objections made in passage 1, so the entirety of passage 1. For the sake of it fitting on the screen, I've only included the portion of passage 2 that has Gary's statement and the first paragraph of passage 1, so that we can focus in on what passage 1 was talking about. So let's go ahead and do that together. You've read the passage very quickly. This passage is talking about the trouble with Gary's buildings on the MIT campus. So the topic sentence here is, the trouble is you don't live in a sculpture and users have to live in this building. So the problem here is one of functionality. The author of this article, of this passage, believes that, that's completely illegible, that Geary focused too much on the artistic value of the building and overlooked its use, and cites some major pieces of evidence, like the fact that there was a flood because of poor construction, that there's large ice panes that are falling from the roof because of poor design. So really not only functionality, but also safety. That the claim here is that Geary completely ignored the safety and the functionality of his building. So now let's go ahead and see how Geary responds to this. The only time that we see in passage 2 that Geary says anything himself is over here. Geary said in response to MIT's lawsuit, "A building goes together with 7 billion pieces of connective tissue. The chances of it getting done ever without something colliding or some misstep are small." So let's go ahead and consider, just as we did for passage 1, what is it that we're talking about? First of all, we're talking about how to build a building. So that's strange. Why would we be doing that? Let's go ahead and go on. What are the claims being made? That it is very difficult to build one without something going wrong. The chances of it getting done ever with something colliding or some misstep are small. And what pieces of evidence are we given? Well, the only piece of evidence that we've got here is that we're asked to consider that 7 billion pieces of connective tissue go into getting the building together. To suggest then that, well, if anything goes wrong with any of these pieces, you're one step closer to something going wrong, and that you should perhaps, the assumption is that you should perhaps foresee that something might go wrong and be prepared for it rather than be criticizing. So Geary here definitely doesn't seem to be in agreement with the criticism from the author of passage 1. So that doesn't make sense. It is a defense, but to say it's indignant, we'd have to assume a little more. We'd have to assume that he's also angry about it. And we're not sure of that. So that's why this is one we're going to skip as not the best answer choice. A summary dismissal. Well, it is dismissive in that the objections made in passage 1 aren't being taken, aren't being considered as they should, and it is summary in that it is very quick. It's done quickly. It's only that portion of the entire passage that we're talking about. So that's why this is the best answer. But let's go ahead and consider the next two answer choices. A long-winded discourse. Where long-winded, again, would mean that it is long. And I can see why so many people believe this is the answer. A lot of people assume that Geary is the author of the entire passage, that the entirety of passage 2 was authored by Geary. But passage 2 quotes Geary, so that wouldn't make sense. And if you zero in that this is the part that we're considering, it isn't long-winded at all. A wrathful tirade. Well, just as for option B here, to assume that he is angry, that he's wrathful, is to assume too much. We're not sure of that. That's why this isn't the best answer. Also, tirade implies that we're talking about something that is very long and time-consuming. And this is very short. So this one doesn't make sense either. I hope that helped with this problem. Just make sure that you zero in exactly on what is being referred to. And just cross out answer choices that don't make sense before arriving to the final answer. I hope that helped.